All right, we're going to go through the process of editing a minisode, and this minisode is over the movie timeline. So I've already recorded this, and we're going to go through the process of editing it. So let's get to it. First step, I'm going to make a backup of this. So this is the original version of the project file that I recorded this with. This up. I bet that was because when I renamed it, that happens sometimes. All right. Just make sure I have only one copy. So Melodyne is one of the plugins that comes with Mixcraft. It's really for pitch correction and stuff like that with music, but the licensing is such that you can only have one version open at a time, and so when you have multiple versions of Mixcraft open, it thinks that there's multiples there. So yeah. All right, let's start editing. So the first step, I'm going to add these effects here. So I have effects change that I've set up. If you watch any of the other live streams, very similar process here. And just go through editing. So just because it has been a little while since I've done a live stream here, the basic process here is, if you look, there's all these different segments. So as I recorded, I went through the process of if I made a mistake, then I would stop recording and then start over again from the last sentence or the last paragraph, or wherever that might be, just kind of in the flow of it. And so with that in mind, each one of these segments here is going to be an edit point. So that's where I need to go in and edit, and then basically take out the parts that I repeated. So like if I read 3 sentences, if this first part here is 3 sentences, and then I made a mistake on the 3rd sentence, I'll redo that last sentence so I still have the first 2 in this clip, and then this one would be, that last sentence, and so on, and carry on. So this will make more sense as we go through it.
But this isn't the only.
So you can see I repeated myself there. That was the mistake. So really it wasn't real full sentence. It was just this part right here. So I need to crop this in.
Out of trees that are packed into the camera frame. But this is.
There we go. Pull that in. And then move over to the next one.
The aorta. His veins aren't even aligned properly.
There we go.
Oh, and
So the more I do this, the faster I become.
Is from his company, ITC. Oh, and
Might be a little bit too long of a break there. Let me actually. Looks like I've got high CPU usage here. You can see the CPU down here, so I'm going to try to kill some stuff in the background. Over here on my other monitor. So hopefully it doesn't affect the stream. So like killing one drive, this kind of stuff backing up in the background, things like that. So hopefully it won't. Of course, that means it's going to take up even more system. I should have shut that down before I started the stream. But that might affect the stream some. So if you notice some chopping going on until that actually closes out, then that would be why.
By the way. He explains.
So I could crop right here, or I could trim, really. I could trim here. It depends. Usually I'll try to do it closer because a lot of times, when you're talking, you're just going to naturally take a breath. And so if I can take out that breath, it's one less in there. I don't take out all the breath
Professor continues.
because that is just unrealistic.
He explained.
Unrealistic in the way that everybody breathes. Okay, so this is a little note to myself. So as I was recording, I did not make a mistake, which means this just comes in and will butt up next to that. There's no edit point. This is not an edit point, basically.
Is a little bit more real, but not much.
There we go.
The camera cuts over.
Here we go.
A luxury hotel as well as a winery. The camera cuts over to Gerard Butler's character Andre Merrick as he At least
So you can see the system. I mean, it's still red, but it's kind of bouncing there. So I've dropped some of it.
all because of the death of one woman. At least that's the story. That's when Andre past is where it's at. That's when Andre.
So you might be wondering. So the basic concept for Based on a True Story, the podcast, of course, is that I'm going to hit save here. Is looking at the true story behind fictional or not behind movies, right? So movies like Titanic and Cleopatra. So I interviewed Dr. Zahi Hawass to talk about the classic movie Cleopatra, and interviewed Morty Morgan, a great author, historian, tour guide that to talk about the longest day in the history of how historically accurate that movie was, things like that. And then, so you might be wondering, well, why am I talking about Timeline then? Because Timeline, the Paul Walker movie, Gerard Butler movie, obviously not a true story. Well, this is, as I referred to in the beginning, this is a minisode. And so a minisode...
Chris asks.
I'm just going to keep editing here as I talk, so I might have to pause as I listen here. But so basically, the minisode.
What happened to him? Chris asks.
Is something that I do as kind of a thank you for patrons to for those who monetarily help support the show and really help cover the costs of the show.
This brings recently I went on sites like use my own family. This brings up.
And so what I do is...
Maybe I'm intrigued.
In addition to the normal episodes...
Maybe I'm intrigued. This brings some...
the normal full-length episodes of Based on a True Story, where we're talking about historical movies or movies that claim to be based on a true story, right?
Ethan Embry's Vonnegut says, yeah, and Stern cuts in. Kramer goes on to use Ethan Embry's version. But they wanted to do Ethan Embry's version of Josh.
There it is. So with minisodes, I cover movies that are obviously fictional.
Times more power. Ethan Embry's.
So movies like Timeline, movies like Pirates of the Caribbean. That's one that I like to use an example of because in Pirates of the Caribbean, they have the pirate code, and so answering questions like that of was there really a pirate code? That's always something that's kind of fun to look into. Was there in Timeline here, right? So in this movie in particular, right, they go back in time to the 14th century, I believe it was. I talk about it in the episode, so I should remember that, but I don't remember that even though I just recorded that.
Of course, according to
actually this episode in particular I recorded like a few weeks ago, so it's been a while.
Unexpected happened though. Of course,
I actually recorded this one few weeks ago, and then I continued on and recorded another 2 public episodes and another minisode. And then when I went to go schedule those, I realized that I had never even edited this one
Before long,
so that's why I was like, oh, I need to go back and edit that.
accurate the movie's plotline is.
So there's a breath there. Let's take that out.
Movie's plotline is. Before long,
So yeah, so the basic concept here is I know they're completely fictional.
each team member making it clear Andre Malik, Gerard Butler's each team member.
But that's, I mean, it's just fun. It's just
What's
a
your name?
chance to compare. So, like in this movie, you know, the big plot line goes around castle guard. Was there really a castle guard in France?
What's your name? Each team member.
Things like that. This big battle that happens in the movie. Did that really happen? Stuff like that.
There's an after chuckles. The spit anyone out? He's at war with a friend. Oliver raises. There's an ominous. There's an ominous.
Right there. So yeah, so those are.
Smiling slightly.
I just do those for patrons. Hey, in chat, Lenny Kravitz. How's it going?
A Frenchman, he says, smiling slightly.
Pull this in.
That war.
Get this out.
And 14. That war.
Find the spacing here.
And
between these.
1453. That war. In history.
There we go.
Commander are not. In history. Are not. In history.
There we go. Pull this over. So this one is actually this particular. I guess I still call it a minisode, but this one you'll notice this one's quite a bit longer. So typical, I try to keep minisodes. I try to answer anywhere from 3 to 5 questions. So as I watch the movie, there's like 3 to 5 questions about history. Some more so than others.
As Johnston. Speaking of which.
With
Although the
let me find this
movie. The name. Looking at this, but it was. As Johnston. When we left.
Where's that one?
He says he was reunited. I couldn't find any. Speaking of which, when we left our store with water. So that's volume.
Where's that one?
Although there's.
Let me listen to this a little bit more.
As Johnston explains it, Greek fire is a liquid fire. The movie implies some believe that Greek.
There we go.
The name comes the.
Yeah, so that's a little bit earlier.
As Johnston explains it.
All the way back here. Yep. Cut that. So for this one, I actually, with
Oliver, a new weapon. Greek fire. As John.
With this one. Yeah, John Forbes Nash. Beautiful Mind. Yeah, that movie. That was a. I mean, like, sad story.
We find out.
But it's a good story.
They do. Sneak. We find out that the. We find out.
That was if you're not watching the chat, that was Lenny Kravitz in chat mentioned the John Forbes Nash true story.
They do. We find out that the castle without Andre. We find out that.
But yeah, so I was mentioning this this particular episode here. This one's a little bit longer. What I tried doing, I started this with the V for Vendetta minisode. I don't even think I called that one a minisode because it ended up being like 40 minutes or something like that. But I actually just went through the storyline similar to a regular full-length episode, and then just decided to take the same sort of process as a full-length episode and go through that, except just obviously a fictional story. So like, V for Vendetta, but still kind of telling the story, like, because I like to tell the story of it rather than just having it be like bullet points of what's true and what's not true. I still like to tell the whole story of it, just because it's a story.
There's a thin the movie never. By that, what I mean is, now that how could he have? And the same goes. But shouldn't they be? There's a thin thread. The whole reason.
Let's find that part. There's a thin thread.
This brings up something angry that has formed. There's a thin thread that could be a loophole to the plot. The movie never really said. By that, what I mean. Say that 10 times fast.
Nope.
There's a thin thread that I could see here.
There's a breath there. So let me cut that and kill this little bit of a breath here.
My own point here.
There we go.
Here. To my own point here. There's a thin by that they go back to its by that they in the present day, then by that what I mean the month and day. So I guess it's possible.
So you can kind of see this. It's a similar waveform, like here and here. So I bet this is it right here.
By that what I mean is
you can see the waveforms on this one and the waveforms on this are very similar. I mean, I'm saying the same thing basically. So that's the repeat. Cut that out.
It's fast. Say that 10 times fast. Times fast. It's fast. Say that 10 times fast. By that, what I mean.
A little bit more of a break.
Fast. By that.
There we go. Yeah, understand between the lines of the, yeah. Yeah, I mean, movies aren't always going to be accurate, obviously. I mean, they're at the end of the day, they're entertainment, they're not documentaries, they're not, I mean, documentaries can be entertainment too. Not saying all documentaries are true either, but they're entertainment. Movies are entertainment, but still it's fun to get to know. I enjoy getting to know the true story behind and get to know
the movie on one side.
Like before I saw A Beautiful Mind, I didn't know anything about John Forbes Nash. So starting to learn more about him and it was fascinating life, incredibly smart, genius guy, but ends up being sad story. But
the movie comes.
But
mention that. I mean,
still something that I think is worth knowing and worth learning about throughout history.
The movie comes. That would mean the movie comes.
There it is.
Is there something I'm missing there? The movie comes to.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, well, the true story is usually better, right?
Missing there. The movie.
But we have to admit that, with just even if nothing else, the power of Hollywood, like a lot of people wouldn't even know the true story if it wasn't for the movie. And I've always said this for my podcast. One of the reasons why I started it was, I mean, my own curiosity to learn those things, but also if in some small way I can try to shine the light on that story, to encourage people to learn more about it, then that's a success.
Arnold. Of history are not.
There we go. Cut this over and over here. So this is yeah, so delete that. I'm not going to use that one. So this in particular, this is the ending here. Tag ending versus no tag ending. So I recorded 2 of them. Hold on, let me add this in here.
In the meantime, but there were a couple. Now there's I managed. In the meantime, that's the. Have you seen?
So I managed
In the
to.
meantime,
There we go. In the meantime, right there. I recorded too because when I actually did this, I was in the process of trying to nail it down.
let me know.
I wasn't 100% sure if I would be able to, get this done. And so I recorded two versions, and that way I could edit in if I did or did not at the time of releasing this minisode. Um, but one thing I like to do is on some of the minisodes, as I can, try to kind of give a peek. And so on this,
In the
you'll also get a peek since you're watching this.
thing, let me know.
I actually got a couple of the guys from the movie Tag to chat about the true story and to kind of compare that. So that was a fun conversation, and that should be coming out. I should get that one done. What's today? And it's the end of August. I should get that one done by hopefully early September to get that one out. But that was a fun conversation with those guys. Learn for people. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the Hollywood. I mean, I consider the Hollywood stuff, as you say that, Lenny Kravitz. The Hollywood stuff is, I mean, again, it's entertainment, right? So it's entertainment. That's all it is. Unfortunately, a lot of people do consider it to be more than that. But it's entertainment. So in that way, I don't necessarily consider it dumb. I just consider it to be, it's entertainment. There's things that are entertaining, and that's, movies can be one of them. Games can be one of them. In order to try to make the story seem more realistic, then of course they're going to include a lot of things that are historical and such, because that's how we can kind of relate to them. All right, I need to throw in the music here. And this. Yeah, I think yeah. Obviously, there's a lot of movies that say they're based on a true story and aren't. But there's some movies that don't say it, but they still, in some ways, are. Um, it's one of those. Ongoing things. There another big aspect of it too, I think, that kind of goes into movies, some being more than others. If you think about it, I mean, a lot of times we think of Hollywood as this big conglomerate entity, and I guess with Disney you might say that it's in some ways it is, um, but it's ultimately at the end of the day, it's they're a bunch of content creators, and they're not. It's not like they're all working towards the same goal. They just want to tell a story and be an entertain audience. And so think of it in that way. One is going to be more accurate than another, because one might be able to be able to transport you to a different time. If you think of especially period pieces, it is not easy to make it look on screen like you are in the 1800s or the 1920s, or I mean, especially if you're talking in big metropolitan areas where all of a sudden you can't have these massive skyscrapers with billboards and all this kind of stuff, and so it starts to get really, really expensive with visual effects and with practical effects in order to do that. And so there's limitations with what you can do, and you try to do the best that you can. And again, there's some people that are going to try to do the best that they can and still stay historically accurate, and there's some who will say, we just want to tell a good story. And of course, sometimes they tell a good story, sometimes they don't. It depends on there's good movies out there, and there's not so good movies out there. So I usually this intro, I try to keep it pretty consistent around 5 seconds. It's kind of where I put it in.
On this episode,
Drop it down to around -9 and then fade it out. Usually around 30 seconds or so. And then on the other end, take this same clip at the end and swap it. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You say, they put some true on it, but just very few. And again, some more than others, but I think that's one thing. So like this is a great example. Timeline, or some of the movies that I cover on the Patreon feed, just for the fun of it, and as a way of saying thank you for people who are supporting the show. But those are purely fictional movies, but they use truth in order to ground it. So like this is a good example. I mean, obviously this is purely fictional. It's they have a time machine, and it's not really. I mean, it is a time machine, but it's not like they can travel at any point in time. They travel to this very specific point in time. But in order to help kind of ground it in reality to tell the story, they use history as a way of doing that. And so I think some movies are going to have a lot more of that. Some movies not so much. But the other side of it is it comes to believability. And any good story, it has to be at least somewhat believable. Otherwise, it's if it's too unbelievable, then nobody's going to watch it. It's not going to be entertaining, and they're not going to make money. So, historical events, historical places, things like that people know happened, or people are familiar with, or they just assume will happen, or something like that. Then they can try to play on that in order to sell that. Where's the ending here?
An end of this.
Here it is.
And that brings us to an end.
This is the end right here. So I'm actually going to cut that right here, pull this over so I know that that's the ending. And then this fades a little bit. Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so many different stories out there, and so many movies, nobody's going to know all of them.
Happiness through.
Even if you lived through, or some of them, it's there's so much throughout history that people try to use to ground their movies in some sort of reality. It's just the nature of it.
True love.
All right, so that's the ending, and then this comes in, and this over here. 25.
And that brings us to an end of this episode.
There we go. And then right in that break there.
Of this episode. Before I let you go.
Thanks. Well, I mean, I done this a few times. It's helpful that I recorded this, and so I know what I did. Even though this was a few weeks ago when I recorded this, so. But I've kind of systemized my process, so I know where the edit points are and all that kind of stuff. And then I know that when I'm recording, I make sure that the final take of when I record, the last take is always going to be the one that I want to go with. And so I don't have to listen to 3 or 4 different takes to know. So that's a little bit of editing that I do while I'm recording, and that helps speed up as I come in here and start editing. Now, one thing I'm going to do here, and this is something I've had to do since my 286S died on me, is I get a little bit of hiss. If you listen really closely.
Middle of the road.
You hear that little bit of hiss right there? I don't know if if maybe only I can hear it because of with my studio headphones on. Um, oh yes, I like what I do. That's for sure. Makes it when you're having fun, you're not really working, right? um, so with that hiss, basically what that is, that's something that's easy to take out. But I'm going to take this through another step because unfortunately, Mixcraft, which is this program here, this does not really allow for some great editing as far as sound removal. So I'm going to export this here. Get that there. And this is cleaned. So I'll clean that, export that file there, and then launch Isotope. So Isotope is probably is an amazing program here. Once this exports, basically I'm going to bring it in here to clean it out, clean it up. So Isotope, it's using up a lot of system resources for this. So as it's exporting, you can see down here in the bottom left, it's creating that. So we just kind of have to wait for it until it's done. But yeah, Isotope, I've used that for quite a while now, and every so often, it's like, so Elements, this version, RX Elements is normally like $150 or something like that. But if you check every so often, B&H Photo has ability to, they have like their daily deals. And so every so often they'll have this on sale for $10. And so I always keep an eye out, and anytime they have it, if it's a newer version, like I had 6 before this, and then 7, and then it's $10, and it's worth it, if for nothing else, for this voice denoise noise that we're going to use here in a second once this is done exporting. Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm also using the same PC to handle all the streaming as well, and so that's probably not helping either with the speed of this. And I also work off of Google Drive, so it's all going through the network as well, which I don't have to do, but I prefer to do it that way. That way, everything gets backed up as quickly as possible. And there's been many times where I've almost lost files or things like that, but because I work off Google Drive, then it's much easier to pull that back if I need to, because they don't get lost there. And then I can also access them on different computers. So I actually I have a tablet that I do most of my writing on, so writing for the show and all the research and all that kind of stuff, and so that way I can access everything on there real quickly, no matter where I'm at. I can do that. So, but it does make things like this a little bit slower for creating that file. Yeah, that's the joys of that. Halfway there. Halfway there. Error 404. That's a missing file in HTTP protocol. What are you getting a 404 on? I'm not sure what you're referring to. I think right, but say wrong. Um, 404 is like if there's a if you go to index.html, but there's no index.html, and or you go to podcast.html and there's no file there. It's actually something else than a 404 is the missing file. It's usually pretty common to have a catch-all page that pulls that. $75, almost done. All right, so this is going here to this right here. You can see it's building that file. If I refresh this, you can see that file growing. Once we have that done, pull it into Elements. Almost there, almost there. This is the only episode I've got recorded and ready to edit, but I am working on another one that hopefully I can get done. Yeah. Yeah, this is it's taking a little while. I'm sure it's the let's pull this up and see. Pull up my task manager here to see what else is taking up all the what the bottleneck is. Yeah, so XSplit. So it's because of the stream. Because I'm doing that at the same time. So this is taking up most of the CPU. And so normally I would be able to get a lot more power to Mixcraft and get it out faster. But this is kind of the bottleneck right here. So downside of streaming it at the same time, but hey, good side. I get to chat with you while I go through it, right? All right, so this is finally done now. So now we can pull this in. And this is going to be a pretty quick process. Here is our file here. And here's what we're cleaning up. So you can see, so this is, there's nothing here, and then you can see visually see the background there. So essentially what we're getting rid of is that there. But one thing that's great about Isotope is either we can learn, so we can learn what this is here, and then apply that across the entire thing, or the adaptive mode is usually pretty good. I'm going to crank this up a little bit to reduce it a little bit more. Select the whole file, and then oops, let me cancel that. Yeah, no, I'm right. Dialog in surgical. Run that in. Do a draw paint. Yeah. That's yeah. Maybe next time. You know, I don't think I've ever actually drawn in Paint. I've used Photoshop for almost what I'll do to pass the time as this is going on. Usually I'll be watching a movie in the background or something like that. Just kind of going on. Not one that I'm covering on the podcast, but just something going on in the background. So like, for example, the last one that I did when I edited the last episode, which I didn't stream live, the last one was the new Godzilla movie. Yep, I see looks like the stream is chunking there. It's working at it. Frozen. It's going. It's going. It's trying. My poor computer's trying to do this. I think maybe next time what I might do is I might hook up my tablet. So I actually do. I've done some photo editing stuff on using my tablet, and I'll have it kind of sitting down here on my desk, and then use this computer to stream. I might try doing that. The catch there is the audio, is being able to listen to the audio. Since the actual stream system is not the one there. So I'm going to have to do this again because you can see there's still a little bit. I actually do it a couple times. That's not too bad, but I'm going to run it one more time. And that's going to compound. So you'll see this disappear even more once that comes back. So if it freezes, bear with me. Should come back once this is done. About a minute and a half. What it estimates. Yeah, I've actually submitted again to potentially be monetized. Initially, they denied monetization for this channel because I post the actual podcast itself, and because the podcast is available elsewhere for free outside of YouTube. They don't like that, so I've requested a review again as I'm and as I've done some live streams and such that are only available on YouTube, to hopefully be able to help with that, because there we go.
On this episode,
So you can see there, that's gotten rid of most of it. You can't hear it anymore. All right, so with that done, I'm going to save that file, close out of iZotope, and then it's done. There we go. Let me save this. I like to do incremental saves in case I need to go back to anything. I went on. I've been on Twitch a couple times, but I just haven't really done a lot on there, to be honest with you. Have you had much success with Twitch, or going on there? I just haven't really done that, but I'm open to it. I just haven't really done it. I'm not sure how much of a difference there is there, because I think that's more. I think Twitch is not necessarily advertisements like YouTube, right? It's more donations from the people watching. Is that correct? As I understand that. So I'm pulling in this file here. That's going to replace the edited one that we did, because the edited one, we didn't clean out the background there. So unsolo that, pull that in, and because it's the same file or same length, we have all our edits, so we can mute this guy here. Another thing with Twitch, I'm not really sure how well they do for non-gaming type stuff. I know that was kind of where they started off there, and so I'm not really sure there. But
happiness through true love.
there you go. So our timing is all perfect. Everything's good. And that is the episode. Almost done. So, next step. So, I'm going to need to mix this down one more time. This is, I just had it open. What is it? 29, 28. Minisode 28. This is version 4. And send that to export. Now's the time to open up Paint and start painting, right? Nah, this should be a lot. Actually, you can see it's already going a lot faster. One of the reasons for that is because we have this one turned off, so all the edits and such. And so it's really just this one long file and this here. Once we have that, we have one more step before this is ready to go. So yeah, not too bad. The streamer time says 48 minutes, so 50 minutes or so to edit this for a 30, what am I at, 33-minute episode. That's not too bad. All right, so once that's done, last step here is going to be in Audition. I can get rid of Mixcraft. I don't need that open anymore. Hop over to Audition. And this is one thing I could do it in Isotope, except the Elements version of Isotope does not allow you to save MP3s. And so I don't do it in there. So in Audition, the basic, all I'm going to do really is match loudness. So I have it set to -16 LUFS, so you can see what's going to happen here. Once I run this, it's going to try to bring up the quieter parts and squish down the louder parts to match loudness. And it's going to match it to a consistent level of -16 LUFS, which is kind of a podcast. As much of a standard as I guess you can get, between 14 or 16 is going to be kind of the standard. So the idea there is that when you listen to this show and then you listen to the next show, hopefully you shouldn't have to mess with the volume too much, as well as messing with the volume in between, in the episode itself, because it's going to bring stuff up and it's going to bring stuff down in order to make it all seem pretty consistent there. So trying to make it easier to listen between episodes and be more consistent there. All right, so this is our final episode. Now I just need to save it off as an MP3. Do 96K, and this is the episode that will get uploaded. This final MP3 file. So that's pretty much the end of this one. I think we're about done here. I don't have any other things to edit, so we're good for now. Hopefully I'll be able to get some stuff recorded, and maybe hopefully in the next week or so should have something to edit down again. We'll see. But thanks for hanging out. Thanks for hanging out in the chat, Lenny Kravitz. If you're watching this afterwards, thanks for watching, and hopefully catch you next time. Bye for now.